She got it. And Stewart doing it all. That is what makes her special.
Hey, Liberty fans, welcome back to Liberty FM. And if you're listening right now, you probably already know what kind of week this has been. Because we're not just talking about basketball anymore, we're talking about emotion, expectations, frustration, optimism, panic on social media, and honestly, all of it at the same time. So let's set the tone right away. This is a solo episode today, just me breaking everything down. Because there's a lot to unpack after the stretch of games. And look, here we go again with the New York Liberty. After the hopes of a new beginning, new coaching staff, new ideas, a system inspired by NBA spacing, pace, adaptability, it honestly feels like we're being pulled right back into some of the same problems that haunted stretches of last season. And if you've been on social media, you already know. Fans are frustrated, coaches are being questioned, rotations are being debated, players are getting criticized. Some of it is fair, and some of it is definitely emotional overreaction. But that's New York for you. That's the New York Liberty. High expectations don't come with patience, they come with noise. Now, the truth is somewhere in between, because yes, the product hasn't been clean, but no, this season is not broken in May. So, what I want to do in this episode is simple. We're going to break down the last three games against the Valkyries, the Dallas Wings, and the Portland Fire. And instead of panic, we're going to try to separate what is structural, what is fixable, and what is just early season chaos. All right? So let's get into it. And honestly, we have to start with the turnovers because right now, that's the biggest thing killing this team. Against Golden State, 15 turnovers. Against the Dallas Wings, 11 turnovers. Against the Portland Fire, 19 turnovers, leading to 23 points off of them. And when you actually watch these games, it's not just random mistakes, there's a pattern. The moment teams start applying pressure outside the perimeter, the Liberty starts speeding themselves up. And that's where things begin to unravel. You start seeing rush passes, force reads, player picking up the dribble too early, transition possessions with no organization, and offensive sequences where nobody really looks settled. And the dangerous thing about live ball turnovers is what happens after the mistake. Because once you lose the ball near half court, your defense doesn't have time to get set. Now you're scrambling. Now players are cross matched. Now shooters are wide open, and suddenly one turnover becomes a transition free, an N one, or a quick 7-0 run. And we heard multiple players talk about this after the Portland game. For example, Rebecca Garner said something really important. She basically explained that Portland's pressure wasn't a surprise anymore. The Liberty already knew what was coming: the blitzes, the traps, the physicality, the pressure on the ball. But she admitted the team still got sped up mentally. And I think that's the key word here: composure, because this isn't just about a system execution anymore. Some of these mistakes are simply about remaining calm under pressure. Jonko Jones mentioned it too when she talked about the team needing to stay composed and organized instead of becoming frantic once they cross half court. And honestly, that's exactly what it looks like right now. The Liberty don't fully trust their rhythm yet. And when you don't fully trust the system under pressure, players start trying to solve possessions individually instead of collectively. Now, to be fair, there is still context here. Short training camp, new coaching staff, players arriving late from overseas, injuries, Sabrina only recently returning, Satu Sabali is still ramping back up physically. All of that matters. But at the same time, some of these turnovers are completely controllable, and I think even the players themselves know that. Now let's talk about the defense, which has been the big issue so far this season. Because offensively, even with all the struggles, you can still see what this team is trying to become. Defensively, though, that's where the biggest concerns are right now. And the frustrating part is that a lot of these issues look very familiar from last season: miscommunication, overhelping, late rotation, losing shooters, and just generally defensive awareness lapses. Against Golden State, for example, Gabby Williams was constantly finding space because the Liberty kept overcommitting defensively and leaving shooters open. Against the Dallas Wings, Aziford absolutely caught fire because the Liberty struggled to communicate through screens and transition assignment. As a result, she scored 5 3 pointers in that third quarter of that game. And then against the Portland Fire, Portland kept exposing similar issues: late closeouts, offensive rebounds, players losing assignments, and stretches where one defensive breakdown suddenly turns into 3 or 4 in a row. There were a couple of times where JJ was completely lost on defense, where Marine just you didn't get into an assignment quick enough, and that led to a couple of frees that really killed the momentum for the Liberty. And I think Stewie said it best after the Dallas games when she talked about urgency, because sometimes it's not even about the scheme itself; it's about recognition. It's about reacting half a second earlier. It's about understanding who's hot, where the weak side rotation needs to come from, who you're supposed to tag in transition. And right now, that awareness just isn't consistent enough. The rebounding issues are tied into this too, because when your defensive rotations are already messy, rebounding becomes even harder. You see players watching the ball instead of finding bodies. You see second chances completely erase good defensive possession. And honestly, that Portland game really highlighted it again. The Liberty actually had stretches where the defensive intensity looked much better, and Stewie said it after the game that she was way much more pleased by the intensity that the Liberty brought in this game than against Dallas. And Chris DeMarco even said after the game that he felt that there were some real defensive improvements, and I agree. There were moments where they were disruptive, physical, active with their hands, contesting better. But then one missed box out, one offensive rebound, one extra kick out free, and all the momentum disappears. And that's what makes this frustrating, because the effort flashes are there, but the consistency isn't. Now, with all that negativity said, I also think people are forgetting the context around this team right now. And because despite all the problems we just talked about, there's still very real bright spots on this roster. Like Satu Sabali, for example. You could already see flashes of what she's going to bring once she's fully healthy. And I think people forget the context there too. This is a player who missed 7 months after the concussions in the WNBA Finals against the Las Vegas Aces last year, then had the cyst issue in preseason, and was basically thrown into the fire right away. So expecting peak Satu immediately was never realistic. But even through that, you still saw moments. The ability to stretch the floor, attack mismatches, scoring inside, play through contact. And then against that, she already looked way more comfortable and ended up leading the team in scoring. That was encouraging. Then there's Marion Johannes. And honestly, Marion is the kind of perfect example of the duality of this Liberty team right now. You're going to get moments where she completely changes the energy of a game offensively. Against Portland, after two scoreless games, she suddenly became the leading scorer in the first half and gave the Liberty life offensively when nothing else was flowing. But then there are going to be nights where she completely disappears and statistically or get targeted defensively. And I actually appreciated what she said after the Portland game, because it was honest. She basically said, look, her role isn't to come in and take 20 shots when she's surrounded by stars like Stewie, Sabrina, and JJ. And she's right. People sometimes reduce players to points scored, but Marine impacts spacing, pace, creativity, movement, and sometimes simply changing the rhythm of the offense matters, even if it doesn't show up as 20 points in the box score. Pauline Astier is another one. I knew she was a really smart off-season pickup because of her European experience, but I'll be honest, I didn't expect her to look this comfortable this quickly. Her confidence attacking downhill, her ability to slash into the paint, some of the reads she's making offensively, those have been legitimate positive for this team. Now, is her current offensive production sustainable over an entire season? Probably not at this volume, but she's shown that she belongs, and that matters. And then there's Stewie. Honestly, Stu has been the force holding his team together for this rough stretch. Because even when the Liberty haven't looked connected collectively, you can still feel her trying to impose herself on games on both ends of the floor. Whether it's attacking mismatches, trying to push the pace in transition, setting the tone physically, or taking responsibility publicly after losses, she's carrying a massive load right now. And what I actually appreciated from Stu in those post-game conferences is that she never really hid behind excuses. Even with all the absences, even with players still coming back, she kept repeating the same thing. The urgency has to be better. The awareness has to be better. The communication has to be better. And for me, that's leadership. Because it would be easy right now to point only at injuries or chemistry issues, but Stewie's been very honest that some of these mistakes are controllable. And despite some difficult shooting stretches, especially in that second half against Dallas, she's still finding ways to impact games. That third quarter against Portland was a perfect example. The Liberty looked energized, aggressive, disruptive defensively, and Stewie completely took over the momentum of the game. And that's what superstars do. They shift the emotional rhythm of a game. And honestly, this is why I'm still not panicking, because despite all the frustration, there's still an enormous amount of talent on this roster. And I think that's why emotions are running so high right now, because people can see the ceiling. When the Liberty actually get into a flow offensively, when they push in transition, when the spacing works, when the ball movements move side to side, when the paint touches create open kicks out, this team looks terrifying. You could see the vision. You can see what Chris DeMarco is trying to build. The problem is not, is the system broken? I honestly don't think it is. The real question is, can this team stabilize when opponents speed them up physically and mentally? Because right now, whenever pressure increases, the Liberties start losing structure. The offense becomes stagnant, the turnovers increase, the defensive communication drops, and suddenly everything snowballs. And that's the challenge. Not talent, not potential. Execution under pressure. And honestly, I'd rather see these growing pains happen right now than in September, October when things really matter. Because this team still has time. Time for players to return. Time for chemistry to develop. Time for the coaching staff to adjust. Time for roles to settle naturally. Chris DeMarco said it himself. The goal is to be ready by October, not May, October. And I think that perspective matters. So, yes, there are problems, real ones, but there's also context. There's still talent, there's still upside, and most importantly, there's still time. So, let's breathe a little bit before declaring the season doomed 7 games in. Because if there's one thing sports teaches us every year, is that growth is rarely linear. And right now, the Liberty are somewhere in the messy middle of figuring out who they are. So, all right, Liberty fans, that's going to do it for this solo episode of Liberty FM. And as always, thank you guys for listening, supporting, interacting, riding through the highs and lows of this team with us. And hopefully, better basketball is on the horizon. Today, the New York Liberty are facing the Phoenix Mercury, and actually, they're facing them twice this week, today on Wednesday and this upcoming Friday. And I think it would be a good matchup for the Liberty after losing against them in the playoff last year. And obviously, side 2 is on our side now, and Phoenix lost a couple of good role players. They also haven't started the season very well. So it's going to be an interesting matchup because Phoenix is a very physical team. So I think that is the perfect matchup to kind of see where the Liberty are and whether they were able to fix some of the issues of the past few games. And then next week, we have a couple of more home games. So this is really an opportunity right now to figure things out. And we're going to have Leonie Fibish and back. Hopefully, Raquel Carrera will get more minutes. They're probably not taking any risk, try to make her play right away, and she still has to figure out the system. Hopefully, Benajelini will be back. She's questionable at the moment for personal reasons. Sav now has back soreness, so we don't know if she'll be playing against Phoenix tonight. But hopefully, all those players will be back very soon. And we will get to see some great basketball. So, thank you so much, guys, for your support. And as we always say, let's go, Liberty!